The destruction caused by wars is not a small thing. Thousands of people die. Thousands of people become homeless. And a lot of people lose their father, mother, daughter, wife, and close, loved people. And ultimately, they don't have a place to move on. This is the probable after effect of any war that has taken place in the history of the world. And in this situation, just imagine you being living in your home, in your city, the same place that has nurtured you, that has given you shelter and warmth for a lifetime. And one fine morning, you realize that the same building is going to be shelled and bombed by the enemy country, and you decide to flee your home. Where do you go? You don't know. This is again an aftermath of almost all the wars. Where does the people go? In this context, we understand that people in such situations go to a place called the Humanitarian Corridor, which are either created by the United Nations. So in this, they go to a temporary demilitarized zone or a humanitarian corridor. What is this concept? What is the concept? Who creates it? What is the basis of creating it? And what is the role of United Nations? And in this, what do you mean by United Nations safe areas? And also, in the recent Ukraine-Russia war, everybody was talking about a no-fly zone. So what do you mean by that? Let's find out all these answers in LearnStroke's ExplainWallah with Arjun or Shaankar. When somebody asks you to leave your country, it is not an easy task. And to be alive in such situation is the most critical thing that you have to do. Imagine that you are living in a country B and there is another country called A, and A and B is actually engaged in a war. And A attacks B. You're living in the country B. So automatically, you will have to flee your country in regards to your safety. Where will you go? In such situation, people who are living in the country B, because everywhere there is going to be violence, bombshells, you will have to leave. You will leave to a temporary place which is called as a humanitarian corridor. That is why they are called as a temporary demilitarized zone. What do you mean by that? Temporary demilitarized zone. That means in this place, most of the cases, both of the countries, A and B, they agree to such place because this temporary demilitarized zone means there is no military activity inside this. There is only going to be humanitarian help happening here. So most often these places are safe transit of humanitarian aid, medical supplies, food, shelter for thousands of refugees who are actually living inside this. So that is the reason why that is called as a temporary demilitarized zone. What is the history of this? This is not a new thing in history. As I said, in most of the cases, both the countries come together and agree together to have such temporary humanitarian corridors. And these were very, very popular during the Syrian civil war. And also, there is another similar thing called as United Nations safe areas, because they are also a humanitarian corridor like thing, and that is called the UN safe areas. In 1993, the UN safe area in the wake of Bosnia-Herzegovina fight was actually seen in this. So the humanitarian corridors concept is as old as even much before that. I should say, when we talk about the 20th century, especially the Nazi regime of Germany, everybody talked about the Kindertransport of 1938-39, when Jewish children were evacuated from Germany to United Kingdom under the Nazi rule. So such humanitarian corridors have existed since 20th century, and after that, as I said, in 1993, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and after that, civil wars of Syria and many other places, this concept of humanitarian corridor was always helpful for people who were struggling. So in this case, who takes the most important role of conducting or monitoring these things and you can see that it is the United Nations who take that important pivotal position to control this, to set up all this thing. And sometimes it is also other neutral players like Red Cross is also involved in this. And it's not always the organizations, even sometimes the local people, the local organizations come up with humanitarian corridors to genuinely help people who are fleeing their countries. It's a very sad thing. And sometimes people say that it's a good thing to have a humanitarian corridor, as the word humanity says, it's to help people. But sometimes people also say that it's also misused to a large extent. So how is this misused? On the one side, it provides medical support, food, shelter, etc. It also provides a way to smuggle weapons of mass destruction and also fuel to the enemy country. So such humanitarian corridors are sometimes misused too. That is something that we have to note here. And so in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war, everybody is talking about this humanitarian corridor. Even people from Ukraine are traveling, fleeing this country, and many of them are making use of such humanitarian corridors. And in the similar lines, in the beginning I told you, everybody talked about a no-fly zone. Apparently, it directly does not have a relationship with humanitarian corridors, but definitely it is also in the news. So what do you mean by a no-fly zone? Because Ukraine wanted to have a no-fly zone. So technically a no-fly zone is a designated geographical space where certain types of flights are completely prohibited. So in one case, such no-fly zone again means you do not want the military presence or the foreign military aircraft roaming around in your skies. So this is the concept of no-fly zone. So this humanitarian corridor is not a new thing, as I said, but the ongoing wars like this, in this case Ukraine and Russia, has seen displacement of thousands of people like this who are seeking the support of humanitarian corridors. Let us really hope that the struggle of the people really comes to an end.